Zookeepers of Reddit, what is the funniest animal at your work and why? I posted this story in another AskReddit. This is from my former co-worker who now works for a really popular zoo in the US. Lion. There is this lioness that since day one of her working there has singled her out from the rest of the zoo team for lunch. Unfortunately, due to the nature of her job, she needs to be around all the enclosures in the morning animal counts. Lioness would follow her everywhere on pounce mode too. Been like that for 3.5 years now. Monkey. I can't remember specifically if this was a spider monkey. I need to check my email. But she told me one of the primate exhibits zookeeper who is a male is being harassed by a male monkey due to jealousy. Apparently monkey thinks that giving food to his GF monkey equals stealing your girl. Gets a lot of poop hurled at him and bites. I went to the zoo Saturday and there was a man talking to us about the penguins. He told us he had raised most of them and their parents before them and knew them all very well, and even knew all their names. There was this penguin just hanging out at his feet nuzzling his pant legs, so he bent down and gave it scratches on its head and it leaned into them like a cat. That penguin seriously loved him. It was the most adorable thing I've ever seen. Ducking Fred. Fred is a southern stingray, just a baby though, only about 3 feet across. He's too small to live in the shark tank with the full-size 9-footers, so he lives in the touch pool with the cow-nose rays. They only get to 4 feet across. He loves people. He comes up and gets rubs, scratches himself on the filters when there aren't people around, and loves to photo them pictures. You know the picture where the ray is on the lady's back? That's Fred's dream. He sticks his rostrum, the nose, eyes, and top of the gills out of tank and swims vertically and sideways, complete with splashing tourists and a distinctive sklurp noise. Once I was training a new docent, and Fred swims up. I'm trying to talk to her and not do what Fred wants and, pet Fred. So Fred gets pissy. He ducks under the water and resurfaces with an epic wing flap. A full square foot and a half of wing flicks out of the water and sprays out. The other docent is sprayed. I get a mouthful of slimy ray tank water, which tastes like fish oil, salt, and people's hands. BTW, and then I hear it. Sklurp sklurp sklurp. Goddamn, Fred just splashed me in the newbie. The ground is wet. My shoes are wet. My khakis are wet. Her shirt is wet. And there's Fred, with his big ray mouth smile, flapping away. Fred shows definite preference to women. I think he can smell the perfume on their hands. He also hates quiet, calm children and loves the ones who don't want to pet a ray. He used to jump around in the tank until we lost a bull ray that died from jumping out. He's smart, and I bet he'll hate it when he gets too big for that pool. The ones that pay money to come inside. Not a zookeeper, but my girlfriend has worked at a reptile zoo for a while now. She said there's a pretty good consensus that tortoises are widely loved. Personally, I think it's cause of their pretty chill nature and the fact that they don't really give a shit once they get to be adults and no humans won't mess with them. In addition, they either look extremely happy or extremely unimpressed, which I think makes their actions pretty funny. Edit. Asked her this question and she said birds in general are pretty awesome, but one of the male macaws at the zoo she works at is really into hardcore rap music and tends to headbang. She also taught the 3 Amazon parrots to whistle the Imperial March. So there's that. Probably my emu. He greets me in the staff car park every morning and we have coffee together. Edit. Work in burb. Obligatory wow gold edit. Thank you stranger for the gold. I'm glad so many people are enjoying my working buddy. Sometimes I really take my job for granted and forget just how lucky I have it getting to come to work with these awesome guys every day. Thanks everyone for all your curious comments and questions. Our zoo had a tame fox. Someone had taken in a fox cub and hand-reared her but couldn't look after her when she grew. So the zoo I used to work at took her in. You could tell she had been hand-reared because she loved humans. She would wait for you to change her water bowl. So you would be bent over, and she'd jump onto your back. She would then climb along it, put her paws over your shoulders and lick at and nibble your ears. If you sat down while she was on your back, she would then plop on your lap and coil up on it. Nothing like waiting for the other keeper to finish changing her bed and realize that she had covered your back in paw prints, licked over both ears and was ONW sound asleep on your lap like a puppy. She would also do this in front of audiences, especially with audiences It is difficult to change fox water bowl with a fox on your back and a group of giggling kids watching. Not a keeper, but at a small zoo I was at, an African grey parrot was kind of having a conversation with me, and like parrots speak, Harry Pori wanna cracker etc, but after a while this bird starts making static noises followed by really muffled speaking. I couldn't work out what it was until a keeper came by and their radio crackled followed by muffled speech. This parrot was doing a near perfect impression of his keeper's radios. Chimpanzees are extremely violent but have periods of levity. They play wrestle with each other and laugh while they do it. Gave our alpha male sunglasses and he put them on after I showed him what to do with them, and he leaned back like the cool kid in class like it was no big deal. Not a zookeeper, but I work with captive primates, gannets galagos. Specifically, they are pretty cute but also sort of terrifying because they try to constantly wipe piss on you, have very strong bites, and make exclusively demonic sounds. Anyways, most of them hate us, as they definitely have a right to do so, but there's one that's a real sweetheart. She's young and actually depressed. Biological. Her mom was too, and maybe that's why she's so mellow. She was really frightened of me at first, but over time we became buds. She's much smarter than the others. I hand feed her a lot of grapes and worms, and when cleaning I can basically leave her cage open and she just sits at the front and watches me curiously. She also loves armpit scratches. Whenever I go to scratch her head she raises her arm up and grabs my finger to try and direct me to it, lol. Then she holds my finger there and gives me the saddest eyes when I stop. She also likes it when I blow bubbles for her. 10/10 makes the job worth. Not a zoo, but an exotic animal sanctuary. We have a timber wolf that loves to steal things from people. She has taken dozens of things from our volunteers. Scrub brushes, hair ties, walkie-talkies, cleaner bottles, water bottles, glasses, you name it. My favorite though, is one day she managed to get a hold of a girl's bra strap and would not let go. She wasn't pulling her around or anything. She was just sitting there with the bra strap in her mouth. It was one of her favorite volunteers, so I imagine she didn't want her to go anywhere. We had to pay her a chicken quarter to change her mind. Reddit, for the curious. Here is a very appropriate picture of the thief. Not a zookeeper, but one time I visited a reptile zoo and there was a room that had been converted into an enclosure for iguanas and tortoises. You could walk in and get up close with the reptiles, and while we were in there one of the employees told us that one of the tortoises had a habit for trying to escape on a regular basis. Everyone in the room starts looking around the room trying to find this tortoise, and I look out the doorway to see this tortoise already out the front door of the building. Of course somebody runs out and grabs the tortoise and brings him back inside. But over the course of a few hours the tortoise kept trying to make a beeline for the exit, always making it out a few feet before being carried back inside. Everyone loved that damn tortoise. I don't have any input, but I just want to say I like this question. It is a happy question and I don't know why, but it made me happy, thank you. My neighbor is a zookeeper and he loves working with the chimpanzees and the otters. Story about the chimp. He was closing up this one male chimp's sleeping cage for the night, and then realized he'd lost his keychain. He saw the chimp holding them, and asked to get them back. Chimp refused. He then said, "Here, I will give you a banana for the keys." Chimp then proceeded to unhook one key from the keychain and hand it back to him. 18 bananas later, and the keys were returned. This chimp is quite famous in Scandinavia. He was rejected from his mom as a newborn and was raised with the zookeeper's family until he was reintroduced to the flock around a year later. There's books and TV series from the 70s about him. About the otters. One summer an otter escaped from their enclosure and was seen around the zoo amusement park, swimming around people who had hired rowing and pedal boats. He'd go up to guests to beg for snacks, etc. All summer the guards tried to catch him, but he learned to recognize their uniforms and stayed away. They finally succeeded in catching him when the guards dressed in civvies. I was at a zoo in Berlin during the bonobo feeding time. The zookeeper brings out a huge pile of diced vegetables, puts it on the ground, and as soon as he leaves these monkeys start having a huge orgy. The interesting thing was that they were only having sex with the monkeys of their own gender. I'm talking monkeys jerking each other off and other scissoring. One monkey ejaculated a Pompeii level load onto the window. Afterwards they just all ate as if nothing had happened. Cool day. Well, it was the gorilla. The mogwai. Cute little boogers. Really easy to care for. Recommended for beginner pet owners. I did an internship at a zoo in Brownsville, TX when I was 12. It was mostly cleaning cages after the animals were removed by actual employees. But you still got to interact with some animals. The hands down coolest animals I got to help out with were the meerkats. You could go in their enclosure to sweep, change out the hay, change the water dish, etc. And the little dudes would come right up and put their front paws on your galoshes and sniff at you, make noises, tilt their heads and stare up at you. They were so friendly and curious. Lots of them were juveniles and would follow you around the enclosure, riveted by every movement you made. I know this isn't very thrilling, but it's still one of the coolest things I got to do as a kid. Not a zoo, but I studied at a chimpanzee habitat for a month or so. One chimp was known for climbing on top of a pole to wait for people to throw food to her. If you gave her anything she didn't like, she would throw it right back at you. I worked with primates for a number of years. They are incredibly smart and fascinating animals to observe. We had some pair-housed squirrel monkeys that were due for their veterinary exams. We would remove them from their cages by wearing heavy gloves, then use an anesthetic gas to mask them down for their full exams. I grabbed one of the monkeys and started to pull him out of the cage, which had a fairly small, narrow entrance. His buddy saw me grab him, ran down from the top of the cage, and grabbed his buddy's tail, then braced his legs on either side of the cage entrance, and pulled back on his buddy while screaming bloody murder at me. It was such a human action. The desire this monkey had to not let his buddy be taken. I almost lost my grip. Bonus, when they would first start waking up from the anesthesia and weren't quite aware of what was going on, they would be super cuddly. Then they would become aware enough to realize a human was holding them and would commence screaming and thrashing. I used to work in a zoo where we had a racist spider monkey. Went crazy whenever he saw a black guy. There were little squirrel monkeys that were allowed to roam free at the zoo I worked at a few years ago. Those little duckers would steal everything. One of them jumped on me and snatched my sandwich right out of my hand. Capybara are surprisingly violent. Tapirs are just like big dogs. They like to roll over for tummy rubs. At my zoo we have a Wolfsganon monkey, Smyrna monkey, with a serious problem with authority. Anybody wearing a zoo uniform, whether it's a keeper uniform or just a janitorial one, will cause him to lose it. He screams, throws stuff, shakes the sides of his enclosure, you name it. He's okay with guests. I volunteered at a pioneer historical site while I was in high school. We had a petting zoo that consisted of the usual farm animals, a cow, goats, llamas, etc. My favorite though was a donkey who had no tolerance for bullet, especially naughty little kids. This one little it kept trying to pull his ears and tail, even after being scolded by her parents. Finally the donkey had enough, and lowered his head to her level and let out the loudest donkey bray I have ever heard and made her cry. From the couple of volunteers I've kept in touch with, he still does this whenever he encounters a particularly naughty child. Sort of off topic, but since a bunch of zookeepers are potentially coming in here, is there a way to become a zookeeper without a specific degree, or really to get any kind of job caring for animals without a degree in zoology or some type of science? I'm in my late 20s, working in an office and not in a position to go back to school. Will be paying off my current student loans for a long time. I have a bachelor's degree in a field completely unrelated to animals, but caring for animals has always been my true passion. Is there a way to get into the field at this point, or is starting over in a school the only way? I was a keeper aide at the National Zoo in DC for a couple years. When I was at the small mammal house they had an armadillo that would love to hump your shoes legs, and this little guy was not picky about it. It actually made it a little difficult getting in and out of his exhibit since he would try to get all up in you pretty often. Humans. Animals are fun and all, but my co-workers constantly amaze me with their ability to stay alive given severe shortcomings. That being said, love me some rhinos. Nothing that big should make those squeaky, happy sounds. Swearing birds. Need I say more? Also our taper. He loves to do belly flops in the water and get his very large D out at inappropriate times, usually in front of groups of school kids. Worked with a green-winged macaw that would train herself when she got bored. Perch. Good giei roll. Target. Good giei roll. Wave. Good giei roll. She would run herself through all her behaviors. She wasn't actually doing the behaviors, just giving the verbal cues and then congratulating herself. The best was when she would say perch. Perch. P-ick. Pause good giei roll. Like. Even in her own training session there were times when she wouldn't comply and have to repeat the cue. This same bird would also answer our radios. If she heard someone talk on the walkie and no one answered in enough time, she'd say go ahead. Then she'd mumble like she was talking into the walkie. This bird was a stitch. All parrots have personality, but she was extra hilarious. I've seen one serious reply. Time for a serious tag. Op. Probably our armadillo. Or macaw. Armadillo is just really awkward and cute. Our macaw knows some swear words that make me laugh, but we certainly don't encourage him because most of the time, children are in earshot. When I was little, I went to a certain aquarium a lot. Whenever we went, there was a fish that would always follow me around. No one else, just me. I named it Friend Fish and I found it adorable. No matter what, every time I went to the exhibit, he followed me. Former zoo volunteer, I had a blue and gold macaw call me Peco. He was great. Museum worker, but our old Rossa tarantula was infamous for shooting urticating hairs into some kid's face. Not a zookeeper, but I think the monkeys are pretty funny because they'll try to throw their it at people. Obligatory not a zookeeper but a volunteer at a rehab place, and definitely the turkey vulture. He likes biting things. He greets you at the door every day and loves your shoes and his leash and a Kang. He is like a puppy but in vulture form. I worked in a small zoo for a while. My favorite was the sloth. He liked me. When I went in to clean his enclosure, he would climb down and chase me in slow motion. I would keep working till he got just out of arm's reach, and he would be waving his arms at me, hoping I would pick him up, then move out of his way. Full stop. I wish I had some to share. I'll try film this gumboot at lunchtime if he's doing something amusing. Stoffel the honey badger would have up there. I just love the zoo. The best. Imo. Are otters. Then monkeys. Of course. Because you can watch them jerk it. Not a zookeeper, but I had an ex that was, and the widespread favorite among staff was a large grouper named Darth Vader. If Darth saw anyone at the top of the tank, he would make a beeline to them and demand belly rubs. He actually died recently and I wound up writing an obituary for him. I always like the elephants. They seem so cool and full of personality. I used to volunteer at a live animal center at a museum, and the funniest was the flying fox. He was one of two animals, the other being the bobcat, that I wasn't allowed to handle, which was unfortunate because he was the friendliest guy there. He had a huge, furry D and loved to hang from the top of his cage, urinate down his belly and lap it all up, all the while with a big grin on his face. Not a zookeeper, but saw a clip of Monkey World on TV. It was so cute. The keeper was cleaning the chimpanzee indoor area and one of the females insists on helping every day apparently. He gives her a broom and she helped sweep the hay into piles, then she stole the hose and helped wash down the floor and mop it. It was amazing. I had to stop flicking through channels to watch. She was brilliant. I know most of the animals are rescued and some from homes, so she must have done it before. Edit. TV. My sister used to work at a small zoo in Virginia. Baby animals have to be fed every X hours. So I had numerous small animals in my house at times growing up that had to be fed throughout the night. We had baby goats, binturongs, ducks, sevels, porcupines. The goat was adorable and roamed around and climbed on things. Binturongs are arboreal, so he'd hang out on your shoulders. It scared the shit out of my little cousin when he jumped from my shoulders to his. The servals were just like cats. They were all over the place. I watched two litters grow up. legitimately from opening their eyes, learning to see, realizing that a wall in front of them, to milk over meat as they switched to solid food. I've picked them up and hugged them and moved them around. I watched my sister train them to sit before they got their meat. The ducks wore socks on their little butts to catch their poop. I've had a porcupine legitimately run across my lap while I was sitting on the floor. If it got mad, it would shake its quills so loud it sounded like America and back its butt toward you. Not a zookeeper but a regular at a zoo near my home together with my dad. He practically adopted one of the ostriches by constantly feeding him with toast, which was allowed. But most people won't dare come close because ostriches are pretty huge. The bird is pretty derpy, always trying to go straight through the fence to get to the bread, trying to eat bassacaps and lines from my dad's jacket in winter and even performing a mating dance when he brought him toast. Well, birds are always funny. Emus are trying to scare you, to show who are the bosses, and then they turn around and run the hell away. Ostriches are extremely curious and try to eat everything like shoelaces or key straps. And parrots are so cute. They are dancing and singing to show favors, and some might have attitude problems and peck you, and some are talking to you but are too shy to come close. Not really a zoo, but I do take care of exotic animals, one of which is a baby alligator. My boss had warned us to be careful when holding it because it could bite you and hold on for 30 minutes. However, we still handle it and bring it to school events. The real danger is the small turtle that it shares a tank with. That thing is easily the most vicious and bloodthirsty animal we have, and it will stop at nothing to rip your fingers off if you hold it. There's also this other animal we have. It's called a peeper and it resembles a frog that has been completely flattened. Its defense mechanisms are screaming and peeing, which I find hilarious. It also helps that the guy who usually talks about at events is always shouting moisturize whenever it needs a quick spritz. Not a zookeeper, but I work at a zoo. The harbor seals are by far the most curious. There is an underwater tunnel viewing area and they love to follow visitors. At night while cleaning the viewing glass, they wait for you to start wiping and will follow you around doing all sorts of acrobatic flips. They also all swim upside down to the water, which people find hilarious. Not a zookeeper, but I've been working on a horse farm for the last few summers. There was this one horse. His name was Raphael and he liked to mess with me while I did my work. I'd put the hose in to fill his water after I'd cleaned the trough and walked away to start mucking. I'd always look over and see him with the hose in his mouth, and he'd either throw it or run away with it. Regardless, it sprayed water everywhere. Sometimes he wouldn't put it down, so I would have to shut off the water and try to convince him to put it down. He would also do the whole head licking thing when you weren't looking at him. Then when you'd turn around, he would look away like nothing was going on. It was inconvenient, but damn it if it wasn't funny as hell. There's a monkey exhibit not far from my home. There's a chimp there who loves titties. He swung over the cage by my girlfriend, gave her a wave until she waved back, then turned around until she did it back, then pretending to lift his shirt hoping she'd do it back. Eventually she leaned forward and he rolled around on the floor in glee at the sight of cleavage, lol. Not a zookeeper, but I own chickens. They come and tear up the front yard during the day, but in the morning they visit me before I come to school. They also love following me for treats. I give them treats occasionally, and then in the afternoon when I get home they come up to me as well. I'll get a picture soon, but it's honestly so cute. Duck. I really need to get a job at a zoo. His name is Willy. He's an umbrella cockatoo. He does not shut up. He can say hello and goodbye, but that's not the fun part. If you go and talk to him and get close, that's fine. But if you try to leave, oh no, he squawks like he's dying every goddamn time. This goes on for at least 5 minutes, usually more. Not a keeper, but I remember watching this wombat at Australia Zoo while a keeper was trying to clean his cage. It kept trying to tackle the man's legs while he was hosing the place out, and the bloke was doing all he could to keep it away so he could get the job done, which included using his boot to push it away, which the wombat didn't seem to mind. He relented at one point and gave the wombat a belly rub that it was seeking, but as soon as he stopped, the wombat was back to headbutting climbing his legs again. I got to pet a wombat later, and I don't envy the zookeeper. They look fat, but they are solid balls of muscle and built for pushing. Trying to keep one of these things away from your legs must be like trying to push a 35-kilogram rock as it pushes back. We have a turkey that is huge, ancient and a hell of a character. He's free roaming, but whenever he sees anyone in uniform he just comes up behind them and shadows them as they walk around. There's been a few times when my group of school kids have started giggling and you just know the damn turkey has come up behind you and is shadowing every step forward or backwards and started shaking his tail if you stand still too long. 2 of our staff got married on site, and just as they were getting to the I-dos, the damn turkey runs up the aisle and starts doing his mating dance at the bride. Actually, were considered to be the same as Cory bustards for a very long time. As a mainly carnivorous bird, their poop is just foul. Like burn your nostril acrid smell. Thank Christ I don't work with pelicans or other fish eating birds because that's just nasty.